stench of cordite hangs heavy in the air, a noxious cloud that clings to every surface, every soldier, and every piece of equipment. The ground beneath our feet is a morass of freezing mud, sucking the warmth from our boots and the life from our legs. The deafening noise is a living, breathing entity, a cacophony of screams, explosions, and the constant rumble of artillery that threatens to consume us all. It's June 22, 1941, and the world is about to change forever. The German Wehrmacht has launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest military invasion in history, and the Soviet Union is reeling under the onslaught. As we stumble through the chaos, the sounds of war assault our senses. The staccato burst of a MG-34 machine gun, the thunderous boom of a 88mm flak gun, and the eerie whine of a Stuka dive bomber as it plunges towards its target. The earth shudders beneath our feet as a Panzer III tank rumbles past, its tracks chewing up the mud and spewing it out in great globs. The air is thick with the smell of smoke, oil, and sweat, a potent mix that's both exhilarating and terrifying. Every sense is on high alert, every nerve stretched taut as we struggle to survive in a maelstrom of steel and fire. But amidst the chaos, there's a sense of unease, a feeling that something is not quite right. The German army is a juggernaut, a finely tuned machine that's been honed to perfection. But it's not invincible. There are cracks in the armor, flaws in the plan, and opportunities for the Allies to exploit. The Nazis have made fatal errors, mistakes that could have been catastrophic if only the Allies had been aware of them. The question is, what were these errors, and how could they have been used to thwart Operation Barbarossa? To understand the magnitude of the situation, we need to delve into the geopolitics of the time. In the summer of 1941, the world was a complex web of alliances and rivalries, with the great powers of Europe and Asia jockeying for position. The Nazi regime, led by Adolf Hitler, had been making aggressive moves for years, annexing Austria, invading Czechoslovakia, and signing the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact with the Soviet Union. But Hitler's ultimate goal was always the conquest of Russia, the destruction of Bolshevism, and the creation of a German empire that would stretch from the Atlantic to the Urals. The Soviet Union, led by Joseph Stalin, was a vast and mysterious land, a communist behemoth that was both fascinating and terrifying. The Red Army was a force to be reckoned with, a massive and well-equipped military that had been modernized and expanded in the years leading up to the war. But despite its size and strength, the Red Army was also a flawed and inefficient institution, plagued by corruption, incompetence, and a lack of strategic vision. The Soviet Air Force in particular was a mess, with outdated planes, inadequate training, and a lack of effective leadership. As the German army poured across the border, Soviet Air Force was quickly overwhelmed, its planes shot from the sky or destroyed on the ground. The Luftwaffe, led by Hermann Göring, was a formidable force, with advanced planes like the Messerschmitt Bf-109 and the Junkers Ju-87 Stuka. The Bf-109, in particular, was a game-changer, a sleek and deadly fighter that outclassed its Soviet opponents in every way. Powered by a Daimler-Benz DB601 engine, the Bf-109 was capable of speeds over 380 miles per hour, making it one of the fastest planes in the world. But the Luftwaffe's dominance was not just due to its planes, it was also a result of its superior tactics and training. German pilots were highly skilled and well-trained, with a strong emphasis on air-to-air combat and ground attack. They were also supported by a sophisticated network of airfields, radar stations, and command centers, which allowed them to coordinate their efforts and respond quickly to changing circumstances. The Soviet Air Force, on the other hand, was hamstrung by its lack of infrastructure, its outdated planes, and its inadequate trainings. As the battle raged on, the German army began to make gains, pushing deep into Soviet territory and capturing key cities and towns. The Panzer III tank, with its 3.7 cm gun and 30 mm of armor, was a powerful force on the battlefield, capable of breaking through Soviet lines and exploiting weak points in the enemy's defenses. The Panzer III was also highly mobile, with a top speed of over 25 miles per hour, which allowed it to rapidly reposition itself and respond to changing circumstances. But despite its successes, the German army was not invincible. It had weaknesses and vulnerabilities, flaws in its plan that could have been exploited by the Allies. The Nazis had made a fatal error in their assumptions about the Soviet Union, underestimating the strength and resilience of the Red Army. They had also failed to prepare for the harsh Russian winter, which would soon prove to be a major obstacle to their advance. The German army was also heavily reliant on its supply lines, which were long and vulnerable to attack. If the Allies could have found a way to disrupt these supply lines, they might have been able to slow or even halt the German advance. As we navigate the chaotic landscape of war, it's clear that the next 10 minutes will be crucial. The fate of the Soviet Union, and indeed the course of the war, hangs in the balance. The Allies have a unique opportunity to exploit the Nazis' fatal errors, to thwart Operation Barbarossa, and change the course of history. But it will require a deep understanding of the geopolitics, the technology, and the tactics of the time. It will require a willingness to take risks, to think outside the box, and to challenge conventional wisdom. The question is, will the Allies be able to seize this opportunity, or will they let it slip through their fingers? The next 10 minutes will tell. As the Allied forces launched their assault on the German defense, the morning of June 6, 1944, would prove to be a pivotal moment in the war. The initial airborne assault, which began at 12:15 a.m., had seen the deployment of over 13,000 troops behind enemy lines, with the objective of securing key objectives such as bridges, road junctions, and communication centers. However, the scattered nature of the airborne troops, combined with the dense fog and darkness, had resulted in a disorganized and chaotic situation. As the sun began to rise, the Allied commanders realized that their forces were not in the positions they had planned for, and that the Germans were quickly responding to the threat. The 101st Airborne Division, which had been tasked with securing the drop zones and establishing a solid foothold, found themselves under heavy fire from the German 1058th Grenadier Regiment. The Americans were forced to improvise, using their limited artillery and mortar capabilities, to try and dislodge the German forces. Meanwhile, the armored columns of the 3rd and 4th Infantry Divisions were making their way up the beaches, facing fierce resistance from the German strongpoints and fortifications. The Sherman tanks, with their 75mm guns, were pitted against the heavily armored German Panther and Tiger tanks, which boasted 88mm and 75mm guns respectively. The Germans had also deployed their infamous 88mm anti-tank guns, which had a devastating effect on the Allied armor. As the morning wore on, the Allies began to gain a foothold on the beach, but at great cost. The 1st Infantry Division, which had landed on Omaha Beach, was taking heavy casualties, with entire companies being wiped out in a matter of minutes. The division's commander, Major General Omar Bradley, was forced to consider withdrawing his troops and regrouping for a fresh assault. However, the bravery and determination of the individual soldiers, combined with the timely arrival of naval gunfire support, allowed the Americans to slowly but surely push the Germans back. One of the key factors that contributed to the Allied success was the use of flanking maneuvers. The 29th Infantry Division, which had landed on Omaha Beach, was able to outflank the German strongpoints and attack them from the rear, using the cover of the beach's many craters and obstacles. This tactic allowed the Americans to bypass the heavily fortified German positions and push deeper into the continent. The Germans, on the other hand, were struggling to respond to the Allied assault, due in part to communication failures and supply line issues. The German command structure was hampered by the fact that many of their senior officers were absent from their posts, attending a conference in Paris. This meant that the local commanders were left to respond to the Allied assault without clear guidance or direction. Additionally, the German supply lines were stretched to the breaking point, with many of their units running low on ammunition and fuel. The Allies, on the other hand, had a robust logistical system in place, with a steady stream of reinforcements and supplies pouring in from the beaches. As the afternoon wore on, the Allies continued to push forward, slowly but surely gaining ground. The 2nd Armored Division, which had landed on Utah Beach, was making good progress, using its M4 Sherman tanks to blast a hole through the German defenses. The division's commander, Major General Edward Brooks, was using his tanks to outflank the German strongpoints, attacking them from the rear and forcing the Germans to retreat. However, the Germans were not giving up without a fight. The 21st Panzer Division, which had been held in reserve, was now being committed to the battle, with its Tiger II tanks leading the charge. The Tiger II, with its 88mm gun and thick armor, was a formidable opponent, and the Allies would need all their skill and cunning to take it down. The Allies responded with their own heavy armor, including the M26 Pershing tank, which boasted a 90mm gun and was capable of taking on the Tiger II. As the sun began to set, the Allies were in a precarious position. They had gained a foothold on the continent, but at great cost, and the Germans were still putting up fierce resistance. The 82nd Airborne Division, which had been tasked with securing the town of Sainte-Mère-Église, was still battling to take the town, and the Germans were launching a series of counterattacks in an effort to drive the Allies back into the sea. As night began to fall, the Allies were forced to regroup and reassess their position. The 1st Infantry Division, which had taken heavy casualties on Omaha Beach, was consolidating its gains and preparing for a fresh assault in the morning. The 101st Airborne Division, which had been scattered across the countryside, was slowly reassembling and preparing to launch a new attack. The Allies were also bringing in reinforcements, including the 90th Infantry Division, which would play a key role in the battle in the days to come. The Germans, on the other hand, were struggling to respond to the Allied assault. The 352nd Infantry Division, which had borne the brunt of the Allied attack, was exhausted and depleted, and the 21st Panzer Division was still trying to come to grips with the Allied armor. The Germans were also facing logistical challenges, with their supply lines stretched to the breaking point, and their troops running low on ammunition and fuel. As the night wore on, the Allies continued to pour in reinforcements and supplies, using their superior naval and air power to overwhelm the Germans. The 8th Air Force, which had provided close air support throughout the day, was now launching a series of bombing raids against German targets, including command centers, supply depots, and communication hubs. The Allies were also using their naval gunfire support to blast a hole through the German defenses, paving the way for a fresh assault in the morning. The battle was far from over, but the Allies had gained a crucial foothold on the continent. The next 10 minutes would be crucial, as the Allies sought to consolidate their gains and push deeper into France. The Germans, on the other hand, were facing a desperate situation, with their troops exhausted and depleted, and their supply lines on the verge of collapse. The outcome of the battle was far from certain, but one thing was clear. The course of the war had been forever changed. The aftermath of the pivotal 10 minutes that changed the course of World War II is a complex and multifaceted topic, warranting a deep and nuanced exploration. As a military historian, it is essential to delve into the intricacies of this event, examining the turning point, the cost, and the lasting legacy that continues to shape modern warfare. The turning point in this decisive 10-minute period was the culmination of a series of strategic decisions, technological advancements, and a dash of luck. The Allies' effective use of code-breaking, particularly the deciphering of the German Enigma code, provided crucial intelligence that allowed them to anticipate and prepare for the enemy's movements. Furthermore, the development and deployment of innovative weapons, such as radar and jet aircraft, gave the Allies a significant technological edge. However, it was the combination of these factors, coupled with the bravery and selflessness of the soldiers on the ground, that ultimately tipped the balance in favor of the Allies. The cost of this 10-minute period was staggering, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The Allies lost thousands of men, with many more wounded or missing in action. The Germans, on the other hand, suffered catastrophic losses, with entire units being decimated in a matter of minutes. The destruction of infrastructure was also significant, with key buildings, bridges, and roads being reduced to rubble. The environmental impact was also substantial, with the surrounding landscape being scarred by the intense fighting. The civilian population was not immune to the devastation, with many innocent lives lost or forever changed by the trauma of war. The legacy of this event is still felt today, with the impact on modern warfare being profound. The development and use of advanced technologies, such as drones, cyber warfare, and artificial intelligence, have revolutionized the way wars are fought. The importance of intelligence gathering and strategic planning has also been underscored, with the ability to anticipate and respond to enemy movements being crucial in modern conflicts. The bravery and selflessness of the soldiers who fought in this 10-minute period have also been recognized, with their sacrifice being honored and remembered by future generations. The impact on the global balance of power was also significant, with the Allies' victory marking a turning point in the war. The Germans, realizing that the tide of the war was turning against them, began to withdraw from occupied territories, paving the way for the Allies to push deeper into Europe. The Soviet Union, which had been fighting a brutal war on the Eastern Front, was also able to gain the upper hand, eventually capturing Berlin and bringing an end to the war in Europe. In the years that followed, the world was forever changed by the events of those 10 minutes. The United Nations was established, with the aim of promoting peace and preventing future conflicts. The European Union was also formed, with the goal of promoting economic and political cooperation among European nations. The Cold War, which pitted the United States and the Soviet Union against each other, also had its roots in the aftermath of World War II. As the years went by, the world continued to evolve, with new global challenges emerging. The rise of terrorism, the proliferation of nuclear weapons, and the threat of climate change all pose significant threats to global stability. However, the lessons learned from those 10 minutes that changed the course of World War II continue to shape our response to these challenges. The importance of cooperation, diplomacy, and strategic planning has been underscored, with the need for effective intelligence gathering and technological innovation being recognized as crucial in modern conflicts. In the end, the aftermath of those 10 minutes that changed the course of World War II serves as a poignant reminder of the devastating consequences of war. The lives lost, the families torn apart, and the communities destroyed all serve as a stark warning of the importance of promoting peace and preventing future conflicts. As we look to the future, it is essential that we remember the lessons of the past, honoring the sacrifice of those who fought and died, while working towards a more peaceful and stable world. The echoes of those 10 minutes will continue to reverberate throughout history, a haunting reminder of the devastating power of war and the importance of striving for peace. And so, we are left with a chilling reality. The fate of humanity hangs in the balance, as the specter of war continues to loom large, a constant reminder that the next 10 minutes could change the course of history forever.